everybody. So I'd like to introduce our speaker, Jonah Spivak, over from Bennington. And he has been working since 2017.
That's right.
On the 250th anniversary of the celebration of the United States and the Declaration of Independence. And he's here today to inspire us and talk a little bit about what's happening over in Bennington, which hopefully will give us some good ideas. And I'm going to take it away. Take it away.
Well, let me start. I'd love to hear introductions from the other folks around the table. Would you mind starting? Or?
Sure. I'm Meryl Sogner. I'm from the Wyndham World Affairs Council, among other things. Oh, yes.
Ken Fay, concerned citizen wanting to do good for as many people as possible.
Betty Fry from Guilford. I've been around this area since 1973, and I love this, that we're going to be doing this up before.
Awesome.
Tara O'Brien, Brattleboro. I work at Brooks Memorial Library. Programming and outreach is my corner of my wheelhouse, and it's a pleasure to be here today.
I'm Jack Lilly, and like Ken, I'm just here to absorb all of this and help maybe celebrate. Yeah.
Wonderful. That's awesome. Thank you guys very much for coming out. I appreciate this, and I appreciate the invite from Lynn Barrett, who did not introduce herself, who is our organizer today. And I appreciate your time, so thank you for this. So again, my name is Jonah Spivak, and I do wear a lot of hats. My day job is working for the town of Bennington. I'm the communications coordinator. And I've also been designated by the Bennington Select Board to be their official liaison for everything 250th related. So the town actually has some skin in the game, which is kind of cool and something that you may want to think about here in Brattleboro as well. I'm also one of the 14 commissioners appointed by Governor Phil Scott to serve on the Vermont 250th Anniversary Planning Commission. And I'm also the chair of the Bennington Regional Anniversary Planning Committee. And I also head up a regional states planning group. And the reason for that is because the New Hampshire grants, and later Vermont, did not exist by itself. We were part of an interwoven story with all these other New England states and New York. So collaborating with other states is also very valuable and important. So, of course, our state played a major role in the story of the founding of our nation. In the 1775 to 1777 time range. And today we're going to talk a little bit about that role, and as well as past commemorations and plans for and ideas for the upcoming anniversary years. Needless to say, much of my experience is coming through the Bennington lens. And my presentation will reflect that, but my hope is that knowing about the work that we're doing on the western side of the state can help inform the work that you'll be doing here in Brattleboro. And nobody here has heard me speak before, so that's good. I won't be boring you with stuff that I've said many times in the past, because as noted, I've been working on this since 2017. Because I was like, gosh, 2017, 10 years, that sounds like the right amount of planning time for me. Because in my mind, of course, the big year is not 2026, it's the year after, and we'll talk more about that. So let me proceed through. So, I mean, I guess the first thing you should always think about is why even commemorate? Why are we doing this? And note that I am using the word commemorate rather than celebrate. There is celebratory elements of this, right? And for some of us, it is a celebration. But if you're a member of a First Nation or some minority groups, you know, there's not a lot to hooray about. So sometimes maybe thinking about it more broadly as a commemoration can be useful. So this year is also different because we're not just talking about planning for the anniversaries. This was our first anniversary year because we started in 2025. So it feels a little different now after all these years talking about planning and now actually having some implementing. And some of the things I've scattered on the table here are reflective of some of the things we've already done. So the 250th, it's also known as the semi-quincentennial. Probably a lot of people have heard that. It's also known as the bicentenary. Right? Yeah, say that 3 times fast.
No.
But I typically find myself just saying the 250th, and that seems to be the most popular way of phrasing it right now. It doesn't have the same ring as the bicentennial, which we all knew and loved. The tricentennial, they'll have a nice, easy time of it, but here we are. So it's funny, I first started thinking about the commemorations because I was doing a lot of local history research. I'm sure there's some other people here that are local history buffs in your own towns and areas. And I was really interested in the Battle of Bennington, and that kind of quickly carried over into the way that the battle had been remembered and commemorated over time. Indeed, the Battle of Bennington has been celebrated, commemorated every single year since it occurred. The only Revolutionary War battle to be continuously celebrated. But no, I was corrected. In the 2019 Congress of Revolutionary Roundtables, I heard from the delegate of South Carolina that Cowpens also has been celebrated every single year since it happened. But I know that that didn't happen until 1781, so the Battle of Bennington is still the oldest, longest continuously celebrated battle.
What about Westminster?
Pardon?
Westminster, Vermont, they claim that they had the first skirmish in the war or something. The people up in they celebrated, I think, every year too.
Yeah, so, I've heard of the Westminster Massacre. Is that what you're referring to? Because perhaps that's it?
Maybe
Yeah.
that's it.
Some people call that the first bloodshed of the American Revolution. People in Westminster certainly like
They
to
sure
say that.
do.
So I love that you know that tidbit, because it is these local tidbits that make it such a fascinating story. So it seems we are compelled to remember our past for whatever reason. In addition to those annual celebrations I mentioned, we've had some really big ones. 1877, 1891, 1927, 1976, just to name a few, and I'll actually talk a little more about those later on. But that all begs the question, what should we be doing for the 250th, right? And that's why this awesome group of people is together here today to think about that. So I got a quote for you, James Baldwin. He writes, "History does not refer merely or even principally to the past. On the contrary, the great force of history comes from the fact that we carry it within us, are unconsciously controlled by it in many ways, and history is literally present in all that we do." Love that quote. Did you know that 30% of the historic organizations in this country were formed around the bicentennial? Yeah. Historical societies, historic sites, 30% around the bicentennial, because of all the excitement and the enthusiasm that was created around the bicentennial. You had this huge upswelling of interest in our history, all this life and vitality pouring into these organizations, all these new organizations. So part of my hope is we can have some kind of an increase. It won't be the same for the 250th, but some kind of an increase as part of this 250th. In some cases, to revitalize some of these older historical societies, right? Because we need that as well. So engaging historical societies, community organizations, and civic groups is essential. The good news is you have some powerful partners out there ready to come alongside you. And I'm thinking like our veterans organizations, our VFWs, American Legions. These are powerful allies.
We've often had veteran representatives at these meetings.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
They care deeply about this stuff.
Yeah.
So in Bennington, we created this Bennington 250th Anniversary Committee, and actually that's our regional logo at the top, which I'm flagrantly using throughout this presentation.
It's nice.
Why? Thank you very much. So it's worth thinking about what are the goals for the 250th here in Brattleboro. I believe many would be the same as what you see on the screen that we have for Bennington. Of course, the details are different, and happily so. Westminster, the site of the 1775 massacre, is just to your south, which had its 250th anniversary this past March, which was awesome. And the Windsor Constitution House, just to your north. And we're going to circle back to that one later, because that's a really choice one. But that's the whole point, isn't it? To honor and remember our local history, to instill that pride of place that will motivate our citizens to be stewards of this history, there's an economic development incentive as well. By instilling that pride of place, that's what gets people to want to stay in Vermont, kids to come back here with and raise their families here. All right.
I like the bottom one.
What was the bottom one?
Promote the, bring it back. Civil engagement.
Yes.
Civic engagement.
Yes.
Promote pride and community and civic engagement,
Some-
especially for Brattleboro.
Here, here, well said.
Why Brattleboro? I mean, civic engagement with our presidential situation.
You could say it's-
What do you think about Brattleboro?
I don't want to answer that question on this tape.
Well, I think we can, it's suffice to say that we all could use the lessons that history can teach us when it comes to civic engagement. No question about it. And let me be quite clear about something. This should be, as much as possible, an apolitical exercise.
Yes.
If you start to pull in modern politics into this, you're gonna have a totally different situation on your hands. And there's lots of venues for those kinds of conversations, but there's different conversations that unite us. And I think that's the thing that we hopefully want to focus on for the 250th. So, it's worth mentioning, I said this year's the first anniversary year. Well, that's because officially the 250th, that's 2026. 250th of what? The Declaration of Independence. That's the federal story. That is the whole story for the entire country. We're all going to be together celebrating in 2026. But we didn't want to wait till then to start for Vermont. Because for Vermont, in 1775, 250 years ago this year, that's the story of Ethan Allen and the Green Mountain Boys and the capture of Fort Ticonderoga. And we felt like, you know, we can't miss that. That's Vermont's moment on the national stage. So we wanted to start in 2025 this year. Of course, we'll all be doing the thing in 2026. That's next year. But we don't stop there. We continue on to 2027. That is Vermont's signature anniversary year. And we're going to talk a lot about that. So here's the Vermont 250th logo. There's some Vermont 250th stickers and magnets on the table, some bling for you. Take them all home with you. I don't need to bring them home. I've got a lot more in my office. So take them, distribute them, give them away to your friends, stick them on your refrigerator, put your kids and grandkids' artwork under them, whatever you want to do. So at the state level, we're kind of taking two tracks. Now keep in mind that for Vermont, the commission was created by executive order rather than by legislation. I worked for 2 years trying to get legislation passed, starting in 2017. And you know, gosh, with a 2-year biennium political cycle, it's very hard to get traction on something that's 10 years out. So while I was thinking 2017 was a great time to start planning, not so much everybody else in Montpelier. Happily, eventually, not that it wasn't well received. There was a lot of interest. But I just couldn't get it over the finish line. And then we had this thing called COVID that popped up, and that put a damper on everything. They basically said, don't even talk to us about anything that's not an emergency related to COVID. But happily, I think it was in the summer of 2020, I was on a Zoom call with our delegation and working with them. That's when we finally got agreement from Governor Scott to take the reins and just create it via executive order. And the main track was really talking about what? The founding of the nation. It was really thinking about Vermont's 250th in the context of the campaign of 1777 and the role that Vermont played in that incredibly important point in American history. But we felt it was incredibly important to not just have the focus be on a military campaign. It was really important that we also wanted to focus on the founding of Vermont, this amazing independent republic. In fact, really, the first ally of the brand new United States, if you will, that was Vermont. And what an amazing story we have with that. So we had to include that, and we're going to circle back to that again a little bit later. So we have amazing stories to tell. Our state was literally born in the crucible of revolution. And our story is more diverse than is commonly known. And we can use that as a way to unify us. And let's use this as an opportunity to shine a spotlight on these lesser represented stories and increase civic awareness, right? So In Bennington, we spent a lot of time and effort on 2025 as our first anniversary year. That made sense to us as we had that story to tell of the expedition to Ticonderoga, and that's really Bennington's moment. And I'll share a video at the end of this presentation if we have time and you guys want to. We made a video of that entire expedition multi-day event. And it was a multi-state event. We started in Hartford, Connecticut, and we took it all the way up through to Fort Ticonderoga in New York. But what about 2026? In Bennington, we have a pretty long list started already, and you can check it out if you want. It's on bennington250.org. But I did spend some time thinking about what things might resonate for folks here in Brattleboro, and I did put some ideas here. First of all, civic season. What is that? Well, Juneteenth is the country's newest federal holiday, and the 4th of July is the country's first federal holiday. So why not use that June 19th through July 4th as a civic season? So as historical societies are thinking about lectures and presentations and tours, why not sort of think of that window? And it's right as people are graduating, schools are getting out, so it's, you have that to think about. But there's still some chance for some school involvement because it is right at the tail end of the school period. So that might be a good thing to think about. 4th of July, of course, next year, that's the big deal, is 4th of July. I don't know if you know this, but in the 1964 legislation commemorating, they added the idea of 2 p.m. bell ringing, or whatever such time as your municipality shall approve. But, that's another great, get the churches involved, get the firehouses involved, ring the siren, run the sirens, ring the bells, do everything at 2 o'clock. That's a nice community thing that you can kind of pull around, and it won't interrupt people's 4th of July activities too much, and it might in fact complement them, but add maybe a little more spice than you might have normally. 8th of July, why 8th of July? Well, on the 4th of July, nobody knew that they had signed this declaration. It wasn't until 4 days later than the first public reading of the declaration happened. So there has been some thought, and in fact, as Hawaii suggested this. Isn't that kind of cute? Hawaii's idea. They're like, let's have what do they call it? The Sharing Spirit of America. It's a simultaneous reading of the Declaration of Independence on the day that it was first read to the public, but doing it at a time, using the time zone, so we're all saying it simultaneously. So for us, it would be 6 p.m.
That can go across the country.
Yeah, exactly, and across the world, right? From Guam to Hawaii to Maine. So that's the idea. For us, it would be 6 p.m. on July 8th. So that might be a fun thing to participate in. And by the way, I already told Hawaii we're doing it in Bennington. So Vermont is on their list. So feel free to jump on board with us with that
It's a
one.
Wednesday, we're open.
It's a Wednesday,
It's a
yes.
Wednesday, we're open late.
Perfect.
Yeah, my daughter also works in Hawaii, in and out
Oh.
of LA in Hawaii, and she, yeah.
That's
So I have
lovely.
contacts.
At the America 250 level, at the federal level, there's talk about America's Picnic, but that seems like that's kind of dropped off. And then Michigan suggested, what about America's Potluck on July 5th? So those are out there also, so I mentioned them. But here's a really cool one for you guys. The 250th of the Westminster Convention is in October of 2026. And what is the Westminster Convention? That is kind of the finale of the Dorset Conventions leading up to the founding of the Vermont Republic. So this is a really nice historical golden nugget for you guys, because this is right in your neck of the woods, and this is that moment when they're really solidifying that decision that what are we going to do? And of course, they also are inspired. They have now heard about the Declaration of Independence, and that has a really cool lead-in to our next year. Because I would argue that whatever we do in 2026, that will be part of our warm-up for 2027. Yes.
Yeah.
That's the culmination story. That's the emergence of the amazing Vermont Republic, the story of the 1777 campaign, the turning point of the American Revolution. And as I said, 2 key points now. So we teased some of this stuff, right? Westminster's come up a couple times. But 2 key moments in the founding of the history of the founding of the Vermont Republic, again, happened just north and south of Brattleboro. The Vermont Declaration of Independence in Westminster in January. There it is, Westminster, woohoo! And that was in January. And then the signing of the Vermont Constitution in Windsor in July.
Wow.
So you have these 2 wonderful events in 2027 that bookend Brattleboro. So So how cool is that? So,
Very cool.
yeah, maybe Brattleboro's role is to lean into the founding of this new Republic of Vermont and all the critical themes that that encompasses. The first democratic constitution on the North American continent, 10 years before the US Constitution was written,
Wow.
The
Yeah,
first-
well, that right there is,
right? That's a good one.
yeah.
The first constitution to give universal suffrage to all men aged 21 and older,
Not women?
not women.
Not women yet.
But it was a good start. And the first constitution to outlaw slavery, at least adult slavery,
Wow.
and imperfectly. But these were really groundbreaking things, and things that we can, and of course all these points have their flaws. And the flaws help illustrate the unfinished nature of the promises outlined in the Declaration of Independence. Promises that we are still working to fulfill to this day, but worthy of commemorating in any case. So the house where the Constitution was signed is still standing, as you probably know. It's a state historic site, currently undergoing renovations. State of Vermont website, as of yesterday, reports that a reopening of the Constitution House is planned for May 2027, with a commemoration on July 8th, 2027, marking the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Vermont Constitution. Why not have Brattleboro come alongside Windsor in some way? And I even seem to recall them saying something about that site is not ideal for a big event, for whatever reason. So they're probably looking for partners and venues to work
Yeah.
with. So again, another really fun possibility there.
How far is Windsor?
And of course, the grand finale, I'd like to right now officially invite you all to have a parade float at the Bennington Parade for Battle Day in 2027. So come on, Brattleboro, you gotta come on over and join us in that parade. It's gonna be the biggest parade in many decades, actually.
And they know how to celebrate.
Yes,
People
Battle Day
come
weekend
out,
is-
it's
yes.
unbelievable.
So that's why Battle of Bennington's on there.
Okay.
You're a bunch of historical-minded folks, so I think it's worth at least mentioning the context of the campaign of 1777, so we're going to talk a tiny bit about that, if that's okay with you guys. So this is the map, if you will, of that three-pronged attack. So from the north we have Burgoyne. This is John Burgoyne, the commander with a plan. His idea was he was going to split those American colonies, those rebellious New England colonies, away from the rest, and in one grand stroke he was going to end the American Revolution once and for all. So he came down the Lake Champlain, Hudson River Valley. St. Leger came from the west, and of course the missing part of this was Howe, who was supposed to come up from New York and be the third arm of that pincer effect. Of course, Howe got distracted. He went to Philadelphia and took that over instead. But arguably maybe that was okay because Burgoyne didn't actually get that close to Albany. Spoiler alert. So there he is. That's Gentleman Johnny. Actually, something of an accomplished playwright as well as a very attractive figure. Quite a dashing man. And indeed, I love this because this is what's written up there is this is part of a letter he wrote to Lord Germain, who was his boss back in England. He wrote it 4 days after the Battle of Bennington, and he now knew that things were not going to go as well as he had thought. And he writes this at the end, and I'm going to read this part. The Hampshire grants Vermont, in particular, a country unpeopled and almost unknown in the last war, now abounds in the most active and most rebellious race on the continent, and hangs like a gathering storm on my left.
That's excellent.
What a wonderful compliment.
Wow.
I like it.
So, and of course we have to mention the Battle of Hubbardton. This is that first real fight that Burgoyne has, because of course Fort Ticonderoga, it falls without a shot being fired. They're chasing Arthur St. Clair, they're chasing his army out from Ticonderoga. They meet the rear guard, positioned in a defensive action at Hubbardton. And of course, I'm delighted to say that one of the people there was Seth Warner of Bennington, one of the commanders of the Green Mountain Boys. He was at Hubbardton. Now, of course, the Green Mountain Boys have been elevated from just a militia to be an official regiment in the Continental Army. He did that after their attack on Ticonderoga. That was something that he and Ethan Allen had gotten done, although in a surprise move, Ethan Allen was not elected to be the leader, much to his chagrin, I suspect. But that was on July 7th. And you know, yes, the Americans were defeated, but boy, did we bloody the nose of the British. They lost more men than the Americans, but they kept the field, so they were the victors, of course, but it was a Pyrrhic victory. And it gave them a sense that maybe this was not going to be quite as easy of a ride as they had thought. Now, let's think about that date. This was on July 7th. The next day, in Windsor, they signed the Vermont Constitution. That's powerful stuff. So when we say born in the crucible of revolution, literally. So I love talking about the Battle of Bennington. I can and have talked for hours about the Battle of Bennington. I am not going to do that tonight. But I did want to mention just a couple of details that I think are kind of interesting. And I have a bunch of things listed there. You can ask me about those later if you want. Okay, this is a good one. More men were killed and captured at the Battle of Bennington than either of the battles of Saratoga, by quite a lot. Here's a good one. The Battle of Bennington was the first successful storming of an emplaced artillery position by militia. And I especially like this one. By the way, both those paintings are original paintings inspired by the Battle of Bennington. And I like this one in particular because the most powerful thing that came out of the Battle of Bennington, in addition to depriving Burgoyne of the needed supplies, we all know that story, but most importantly, it galvanized the minds and the morale of the people of New England and New York. It was a stunning victory. We didn't just win, we completely devastated them. We crushed them. And after the Battle of Bennington, the militia poured into Saratoga to join Gates by the thousands. By the time of the surrender, there was over 22,000 Americans to about 4,000 or 5,000 British. So when people, actually, I don't even have to say when people say the Battle of Bennington was important. I will quote Thomas Jefferson, who called the Battle of Bennington that first link in the chain that issued in success at the Battle of Saratoga.
Well, that flag is interesting.
Yeah.
So is it a forecast of things to come? I mean, it isn't complete. It's just.
Well, so that flag is what is now called the Green Mountain Boy flag. But it was actually John Stark's battle flag of New Hampshire. So it's an interesting story. And by the way, the 76 flag, which is also known by vexillologists, vexillology is the study of flags. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right. Did I? It's a great word though, isn't it? But the 76 flag, known as the Bennington flag, was originally thought to have possibly been flown at the Battle of Bennington, but no. In fact, the one, at least at the Bennington Museum, was not. It was from a slightly later period, probably from the War of 1812. But, having said that, I'm glad you point that out. That today is one of the most recognizable National Guard flags in the country. So the Green Mountain Boy flag, it's still the flag of the Vermont National Guard, and it is one of the most recognized and popular National Guard flags that's out there. Good eye. All right, so I am running a little slow on this because we're being chatty. Is that okay? How are people feeling?
Yes.
Is that okay? All right, good. So I mentioned this history of commemoration, some of those big ones. And actually, I should mention Bennington Battle Day. There's only one other state that has a battle, an official holiday for a battle, and that's Texas. And it's for San Jacinto Day. But they don't give their state workers the day off. So I don't know if that really counts. And I can say
What about Patriots Day in Massachusetts?
well, that's not a specific battle though, but that's a really good point. And do they have the day off for Patriots Day?
Yep.
Ooh,
And that's when the Boston Marathon
nice.
is.
That's a good one. So if they called it Lexington and Concord Day, then you would have been in the running.
Right.
So that's a good one. So we've had some really big celebrations. 1877, that was U.S. President Rutherford B. Hayes came to Bennington to celebrate. That's when the idea of a battle monument actually first arose. It took a while to take root, but that was when the idea was first proposed. But then 1891, that's another big one. That's when finally that idea comes to fruition, and they dedicate the Bennington Battle Monument in 1891. And again, we have another US president come to see us, this time Benjamin Harrison. 1927's up there. I put that up there because that's the biggest of the celebrations. Over 100,000 people came to that year's celebration. That's a lot of people. And I also mentioned some big ones, 1976, the bicentennial, and 1991, the bicentennial statehood. Does anyone remember that? Because, yeah, it kind of came and went without too much noise, but there was one really cool thing that happened, because when Vermont joined the Union, they put a little piece in the Vermont Constitution saying that after 200 years, we would have to vote to decide whether we're going to stay in the United States. So that actually happened in 1991. They voted, and sadly, they did not renew the option. So we will not have that opportunity again, but it did happen in 1991. So in 1809, at one of those annual commemorations, the people of Bennington, they write to John Stark, who of course was the hero at the Battle of Bennington. He led our troops there. And they wrote a letter to them. They said, our young people, they don't remember what you look like. A lot of time has passed. Would you please come this year to join us? And he writes back. He's old and infirm. I think he was 82 or something at this. And he says, because of my age, I can't make it. But he writes this wonderful letter to the veterans in Bennington. And in fact, the entire letter is on a plaque in downtown Bennington in Four Corners. But I have a piece of it written here, and I will just draw your attention to the PS, his toast.
Yeah, look at that.
Yeah, live free or die.
Yeah.
There are some things that are worse than death, is actually the full quote. But I guess that doesn't all fit on a license plate. So there you have it. Live free or die. The New Hampshire state motto was from his salute, his toast to the veterans of the Battle of Bennington.
Did Molly start? Was that his wife?
Yes, that's right. And we have a mom who, by the way, never set foot in Vermont, but my goodness, her name is everywhere in Vermont, right?
Yeah.
We've got a Molly Stark Elementary, the Molly Stark Byway, Molly Stark Hotel, and this and that. It's great. And a wonderful statue to her in Wilmington, by the way. So these are the eyes that are looking at the final approved design of the Bennington Battle Monument, right? They had put together this very prestigious group of people to come up with this design for the Battle Monument. And we should have a drum roll. It's like, dun, dun, dun!
Yeah.
Yeah, there it is. That was the approved official design of the Bennington Battle Monument. So those eyes belong to this gentleman, Highland Hall, former governor of Vermont, historian, lover of history, lover of the Battle of Bennington. At this time, in his 80s, he took one look at that design and said, no way. No way in heck is our incredible history and battle going to be memorialized by this lame little grouping of statues. Sorry, that's not happening. So in his 80s, he literally went around to that entire committee and changed their minds. And instead, we got what is today, still to this day, the tallest man-made building in the state of Vermont. The second tallest unsupported monument in the entire country, second only to the Washington Monument. This is, outside of DC, there is nothing like this. And I'd like to think that one message that Highland Hall is sharing with us is that we don't have to settle. We can think big sometimes. And actually I have a couple more photos to share. So there's a monument being built, something like 6,000 stones. You can see it with the scaffolding on there. A worker actually was injured and fell, breaking through the scaffolding. He fell, I think, something like 60 or 80 feet. But the breaking of the scaffolding, each layer below, softened his blow. He came to work the next day.
Wow.
Wow, right? And then on the far right, you see the finished battle monument with some horse and buggies in front. Because let's remember that time frame, right?
Didn't they just do some work on it?
They're just completed a study on it. But there is work to be done.
Okay.
So it was a rainy day in 1877. That was the one Rutherford B. Hayes was there. But that didn't dampen the spirits of the crowds who came out in force. They created this centennial arch to go over the main street, as part of the parade. And here's a photograph of the tenting grounds in 1877. And that was an interesting one, because remember, why did Rutherford B. Hayes even come to Vermont? Well, he had fought with the American Brigade at the Battle of Cedar Creek in the Shenandoah Valley in the Civil War. And I often wondered if it wasn't that connection that made him feel strongly enough to come to Bennington. And not just him, thousands upon thousands of soldiers marching in their original units from the Civil War came to Bennington, and you could see them camped out here on the hill just to the west side of Bennington. That large tent sort of in the center held 3,000 people. And that's where the orations and speeches and toasts were made. And how they did that without public address systems is a mystery to me, but they had good projection in those days. And by the way, on the right, we wrote in the side, that's the Old First Church. So if you've ever been to Bennington and you've seen the Old First Church, you have a sense of where this was located. So in 1891, we did another arch. Maybe arches is a thing for Bennington, I don't know. This one was painted canvas and wood to make it look like stone. They had a 100-person choir, because this was also the centennial of statehood. And the dedication, as I said, of that battle monument, which had now just been completed, and again with a US sitting president visiting Benjamin Harrison, who famously said on the lawns of the Veterans Home, what school child in America today has not heard of the incredible exploits of John Stark and his incredible victory at the Battle of Bennington? And I was like, quite a few school children today don't know that story, but I'm glad he said that. And indeed, a 19-year-old starry-eyed Calvin Coolidge from Plymouth, Vermont had come to Bennington, was in the crowd that day for this event. Oh, this is a fun one. 1911, electricity was a brand new thing, so for the celebrations that year, they electrified Main Street. And they had all these electric displays, which was pretty cool. And here's a picture from that 1927 celebration. That was the biggest, the 100,000 people coming to Bennington. And you can see there the mounted units in the parade coming down the street there. All right, bicentennial. A lot of us remember that, right? Probably most of the people in this room. I was 9 years old. I had just moved to Vermont the year before, and I thought this was the coolest thing ever. But interestingly, there was a little friction. Surprise, surprise. Amongst the planners of the events, there was a little friction. Apparently, those folks over in New York wanted to do something at the battlefield, and that really raised the ire of the people in Bennington because their big reenactment was going to be at Willow Park. So there was a little bit of that. And in fact, here's some pictures. That's the encampment at Willow Park. And in the top right, oddly leaning, is the battle monument. I'm not sure how that happened. It's like the Leaning Tower of Bennington. And here's the front page banner from that day. You can see it almost as like a Woodstock kind of scene. I mean, it was packed with people. And so huge crowds and a huge reenactment. Here's a picture of part of the battle there at Willow Park. They had horses, they had cannons, they had musketry volleys. I was like, man, this is the best. I love this. I can't wait for next year. Well, what I didn't know is that next year there wouldn't be a reenactment like that. And in fact, there has not been a reenactment like that since. So here we are. We are planning a big reenactment for the 250. And this year it will be at the battlefield. So a little different there. So here's Governor and Mrs. Snelling marching in the parade in 1977 at that year right there. Gosh, look at that. Right? She looks so young, doesn't she?
Yeah.
So now we're kind of, so what's been going on? So we did our first 250th reenactment, our first 250th event in 2021. That was the Breckenridge standoff. And then to the right, in 2022, that was the capture and rescue of Remember Baker. And then in '23, that was a funny year because it was mostly still just land grabby kind of stuff, New Yorkers and Vermonters or New Hampshire granters fighting it out. So we did a series of flash mobs in local pubs where we would have a bunch of people in garb show up, start talking about the politics of the day. New York's sending surveyors up into Clarendon and we gotta take care of them, right? And then Ethan Allen would show up and start haranguing the crowd, and then our special ending to all these was we would always have the local police show up and arrest Ethan Allen. So a bounty for the arrest of Ethan Allen. If you go on YouTube, you can see it in all its glory. 2024, we did a Liberty Pole raising in Bennington because that's what we were doing in the colonies. That was a big way of protesting back in the day. We had a number of events around that. Also, you see on the right, a focus on education in kids. We've been doing that for years now, doing deep dives with the kids in our area, so they learn this sort of pride and place that we're trying to teach. Of course, 2025, that was this year, that was our expedition to Ticonderoga. And you can see the commemorative powder horn there, and these are pictures from some of the various events. And there's even yours truly down there, just to the left of the musket sign. And I'm going to circle back very briefly back to this idea of history and education, because this is so incredibly important, and kids are primed for this. They are excited. Nothing makes the Declaration of Independence more real than connecting it with what happened in their backyard. So all these themes that are outlined in the Declaration of Independence and then acted upon in Vermont's constitutions so much earlier, these are all very exciting to kids. And we need to keep that in our mind because that is our next generation. And if we don't capture their imaginations, we're going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
So I think we all know that. So having said that, so I'm looking around, there's this wonderful group of people here. And doing any sort of 250th planning, you need many leaders. Everyone has to be a leader in this effort. Some people are good at fundraising, some are marketing people, event planning, publication, whatever it is. Where do you see yourself? What skills can you offer? Even if it's just volunteering, being there, how can your passion and expertise contribute? So that is where I get to leave you guys and turn it to your thoughts. And I do have a little video if you want to watch some of that, but maybe some questions first and then video if you want to. It all depends on timing too. So.
I came in a few moments late, I apologize, but did you talk about what Bennington is actually planning to do?
Yeah, so we have a whole list of events in 2026. Mm-hmm. Not unlike some of the things we suggested for you, we are also using civic season as a way to promote civic awareness. We are doing a lot with Dorset because I mentioned the Westminster was actually the 4th convention. The first convention happened this year, 250th anniversary, but there's 2 more in Dorset that we're going to be working with them on. We're doing a signature event in the North Shire. And then we're also going to be doing the July 4th thing, like everybody else, along with July 8th. And for us, Battle Day is a big deal every year, so we continue to build that up as a bigger and better event each year. So for 2026, that's kind of where we're at. But we're also planning a lot of major projects that we're still working on. For example, the battlefield, if you've ever been to the Bennington battlefield, has a 12-foot raised railway that runs right through the center of the battlefield, which is kind of horrifying in a way. And we're like, what were they even thinking? But then we're like, there's a 12-foot raised railway bed going right through the middle of the battlefield. Maybe we can use that. Yeah. So we're actually going to be having a train, an interpretive train with costumed interpreters on it, going from North Bennington to the battlefield. Right. And it follows the route of General Stark, right through the center of the battlefield. So we have a good interpretive spiel, and you'd be experiencing it in a way that most people never would. It also is a boon for people with mobility challenges. Mm-hmm. So we're doing a test run of that in 26, one day. It's a lot of money to have a train. And then we're doing it for 2 days in 2027. And in 27, that'll especially be useful because we're going to have a really huge reenactment, and we expect crowds and parking will be a problem, so using the train will help facilitate that. We're also working on building a mock Catamount Tavern. which was a pretty famous building in Bennington, where Ethan Allen had his headquarters for the Green Mountain Boys, and then later, that's where John Stark did his planning for the Battle of Bennington, and it's where the Council of Safety met, which was the governing body for the brand new Republic of Vermont, until they could hold their first elections. So those are some of the big projects that we're still working on in '26 for our grand finale in '27.
Where'd those 2 arches go?
So we looked into doing arches, because we're
What
like,
happened to the 2 that,
don't know. I
Oh, you
mean,
don't?
yeah, the second one was in 1891,
yeah,
so I don't know what happened to it.
but it was stone?
No,
it
it was wood and painted canvas
Yeah.
to look like stone. And by the way, that was the Putnam Hotel, if you were looking right through it, which is still there. So we did look into doing an arch, and it's kind of problematic. The state does not allow things over state highways anymore. We try to make it, hey, aren't we grandfathered in, you know? We do it all the time, baby. But so we did have a group look at that, and while we couldn't do it while the street was open, there was thoughts, well, what if we closed the street? And then we looked into the costs, and we tried to find a partner for engineering to do the work, and that seemed like it was more problematic, and sort of ended up being one of those projects that we looked at, but then didn't really have enough legs under it to seem to move forward. So I think if we have any sort of an arch, it'll probably be at the Veterans Home. It wouldn't be on Main Street.
So are there any plans to really develop all of Route 9? Which is the giant, you know,
Oh,
Molly Stark
yeah, so,
trail.
Stark
So
Trail.
is there, I mean,
Yeah.
that's some way, that's real. It starts in Brattleboro and ends in Bennington, and is there
it's a
some,
great linkage,
something
yeah.
we can
have a
we can
parade.
collaborate
I think that would be
on-
lovely.
You could have a bike ride, like a
Yeah.
commemorative ride,
Yeah.
although who wants to ride on your own?
Exactly. No.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean, if they closed it to
Yeah, they
traffic
have to
somehow
close
for
it.
a period.
Early morning.
but a neat idea, and one of the ways that that we did the expedition is we had that ceremonial powder horn that we literally carried following the route. So
Yeah.
Oh.
in New Hampshire, we have a lot of interest from the folks there. They want to do a March to Bennington event. So maybe we can collaborate with them. Some of those units probably did come through Brattleboro area-ish. So maybe we coordinate with New Hampshire, have them come right through Brattleboro, continue on through to Bennington. And I recently had a call from Adams, Massachusetts. Some of their militia units, of course, were at the Battle of Bennington, and they also want to participate in some sort of a reenactment of that. So I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
I'm curious about the Constitution. Did it have some elements that were sort of initiatives and well thought out and were incorporated into the national Constitution?
You know, I'm not an expert on that. I don't.
Does it have
yeah.
separation of church and state, or does it have equal branches of government?
You know, I've never studied that, but there is a really good Vermont History Journal article. And if you want to just email me, I can send you that, because it talks literally about exactly that. So I can, I'm not qualified to answer that right now, but I can definitely get you the information. Good question.
If there aren't other questions, I had a question about the relationship with the America 250
Yeah.
Commission. If you go to the America 250 website, there are new photos of, as compared to last year. And then the link to the Vermont Commission actually shows like a tourism website or something.
I have not been on their site recently.
What is your relationship with them, or if at all?
So the Vermont 250th has chosen not to be a partner or engaged with America 250.
Okay.
Is the short answer. And maybe we should just leave it there.
Okay.
But the tone has changed dramatically.
Yeah.
And I guess for those who are interested in the history of these sort of 50-year galas, there was, you may recall that in '76, Nixon also tried to take over the bicentennial and turn it into a political arm, and that was not well received then either. So there you have it.
Well, they had some fantastic stuff like the tall ships.
They're coming back.
They will come back.
Yeah, they're doing that again. That is happening. So you'll see those. And actually, there's been fantastic participation internationally in that as well. So I think you'll be happy to see that that'll be coming again to the East Coast next year. Yeah. Yeah.
That's interesting. So you have a whole group that has, I mean, we've been doing these meetings, and some of us have our own groupings of things that we've been doing to prepare, but just really, you know, talking about the Constitution and regular kind of lectures to get people thinking about the language of the founding documents and how they relate to controversies today. So it's been more of an intellectual kind of, you know, exploration leading up to next year when we'll have a featured speaker. But it's been, you know, we've been convening these meetings, but no leadership has really emerged. The town hasn't taken any real interest in reading anything. There's always a 4th of July parade, but the people haven't been coming to talk about it. So
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just curious, like, how did your, like, where's the leadership coming and the sort of coordination for what you're doing in Bennington? Because so far it hasn't really coalesced here in Brattleboro.
Well, I could say from our side, we have a lot of very active, engaged people, and right early on we knew we wanted to be regional. So it was not just Bennington, it was Bennington and the southwestern Vermont region and a little bit into New York. And we even embrace our Massachusetts folks a little bit as well. So we, early on, pulled together a pretty large group. We have what we call a full committee, which meets roughly, has been meeting quarterly since we started in 2022. And that's a pretty big group. I think there's around 35 people on that committee. They don't all show up at any one meeting, but that's how many people we have on paper. Then we have a steering committee that meets at least 10 times a year, so monthly except for December and August. And that's the group that is providing the leadership. That does it's more nimble, it meets more often, so we can respond to things as they occur. And that has about 18 really committed people, and we just had 2 more join. So part of it is we do, actually not so much now, but in the beginning, we always had a piece at the end of our meeting, and it was who's missing. And we would talk, and we would literally be identifying, well, who's the organizer of the 4th of July parade? They need to be here. You know, who's a member of municipal town government who hopefully has some interest in history? They need to be here. You got to kind of, and maybe you're strong-arming a few people at the start, but hopefully some leaders will emerge. People that are passionate about it, that are willing to put in the time. And broadening your net is the best way to do that. And again, don't forget your civic groups, your veterans groups. Those are great places to get people that really know how to organize. I don't know about here in Brattleboro, but the VFW in Bennington, wow, they are a powerhouse of organization. And they have something like 900 members. So that's a great way to leverage the assets that are out there. So
It's interesting, because when you were showing the slides, and you said that education was
Yes.
a big component, I wrote down in my notes, where are the school teachers?
Yes.
Like, you know, like, how do we bring in someone from the school system? Because that we have not approached at all.
No.
And
So-
I think that that's going to be key.
I just feel that we're not saying we're the organizers, which is probably part of our problem.
Yeah,
You
it
know,
is.
because we're sort of just saying, hey guys, you know, this is a big thing coming, we should get together and have ideas, but we're missing, you know, the people are gonna say, here, you gotta come, we're gonna do this, because that's not really we can't take it on, it's not our thing. So we thought, well, we'll inspire people. Well, no one's inspired.
Well,
Well, I think
But
the
the
political
Historical
climate has
Society-
been,
the
people are not
Historical-
that enthusiastic.
well,
so
and again, that's another reason to
I think they should be.
try not to mix modern politics into this.
It's hard though, because people are feeling defeated
I get it,
and
yeah.
upset,
And
so,
there's-
you know.
But there are things, there's more unifying us than there is separating
Yeah, I
us.
agree
And when
with
you
you.
talk about like the concept of what does the Declaration of Independence talk about? You know, I dare say everyone agrees with those tenets. And most people would even agree that they're not finished yet. You know, we haven't.
You're not in Brattleboro.
Well, believe me, I'm not in from Brattleboro. But this is not new to me, and it's something we've been talking about. Now, here's something else I'm gonna mention. Apropos to that, is that July 4th, 2026 may be a day of protest also. So as part of your planning and thinking, think about, well, how does that, because in a way, that's celebrating the truest and most important of American values. And there's a way that you can get everyone on board with that, regardless of what side you're on. So that would be my advice to you, we're not talking about modern politics. We're talking about commemorating our country and the values that made this country great. And look, regardless of your politics, well, I personally believe this is a great country, warts and all. And everyone that agrees with you on that, stop there and start planning an awesome 250th.
Where is the Bennington Chamber of Commerce's involvement in your
So we have a regional chamber, which covers southwestern Vermont. They've been great partners with ours. On them, they're thinking of it more of a tourism lens. So, we're doing these events, we have this great history to celebrate. And again, part of it's a little easier for Bennington because we have these historic sites and monuments that are really they sell themselves. Yeah, the battles in New York, however, though, So in a way, you are right, it is a little easier for us, for the chamber to see where those connections are. But you definitely want to have a partner from the chamber. You want to have some of your marketing people, because this is a great marketing.
The chamber here
We don't have
puts on the
marketing
4th of
people.
July parade.
Yep.
But they do it privately now. So it's the O'Connors, and then the Kate O'Connor is now the executive director of the chamber, but they're still, it's a very,
Kevin
turned
really
into
puts
a,
it together.
Kevin,
The
but
brother.
it's still,
Are any of them
now
history
it's
buffs?
been reduced.
Are any of them
You got
history
this on
buffs?
video? I don't know.
We might have to cut. Just
Well,
kidding.
so,
But are we gonna talk about what we're up against here, or, or
You
just pretend
should.
we got what you got?
but you don't need to
Because we
talk to
don't
me
have
about
what
that,
you-
probably.
I don't have one of you.
Well, I suspect you do. There's,
Well, the Historical Society is doing a big thing in November, right? And so they've been involved, very involved, obviously. But they are limited, I think, with staff and that sort of thing. And then the chamber we just talked about, the town.
The town
Well,
itself.
that's
The town
what I'm
itself.
getting at. He belongs to the
I
town.
know.
He
He is employed by the
that's
town.
correct, the
He's a
town is
history
skin in
buff.
the game.
There's the skin in the
Yeah.
game.
That's
Yeah,
right.
Yes.
It legitimizes
We don't have
all of
that.
the efforts if
Yeah.
the town employee is the one leading this.
You have a select board or a mayor?
Select board.
Okay, so that's where you start. You go to the select board and say, this is the situation, we are excited to do something at the 250th, we would like the town to come alongside us. Is there someone in town government who's interested in this? Is there,
We tried.
but start there.
We tried
Yeah.
in one meeting.
Yeah.
One.
How about the people behind the strong town? If we won the strong town,
Yeah.
that was
That was
town.
it was a town effort.
How about, steer them toward.
That was when we had a marketing group for the town too that pushed that, that was involved with that. And
So
we
now
no
you
longer
can-
have a town marketing initiative.
But now you've got a 250th initiative and some opportunities there, so it's a new conversation.
Yeah.
And it's not too late. I love the fact that you guys are thinking about this. So definitely talk to your town government and look to those other groups. I mean, you can see those that are getting things done. Who are the good organizers? Who does the Marching of the Heifers thing?
That's
Oh,
been
it's gone. It's
That's
gone.
been-
They don't do that anymore?
They folded
It's
that
been
like
gone
what?
for 3 years.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right?
So bad example.
Yeah.
Hey, maybe they're looking for something to do now, you know?
No, they took the money and ran.
Oh dear.
There's-
Wow, all right. You guys have anything positive to say?
Listen, so let's just be real. So what you are in Bennington, your paid position,
Yeah.
it would be Seth Thomas
Yeah.
here. Do you think we could get this out of Seth?
Seth is overextended, I think,
Yeah.
in my humble opinion. I think
That's right.
Seth does wonderful work for this community.
Yes, he does.
Yeah, I mean, we can attest to that at the library.
That's right.
So,
But realistically, that's what I'm just saying, could
Well, part of it is
Could we
getting.
look to the equivalent of what he is? No.
Well,
Set
but you
things.
start with the select board, because the select board is your elected leaders, and they, because I'm relatively new to municipal government. I was self-employed for the first 30-plus years of my life. I've only been working for the town for 4 years. And when they hired me, it was with the caveat that I would have to be allowed to continue to do this work that I was already interested in. So in a way, it's not like Bennington, magic.
Right.
It just happened to work out. But the key piece of that was then going to the select board, and the select board embracing the idea and saying, yes, the town should have a designated person for 250th planning, and happily I was there. So this person, if he's a qualified person, if the select board tasks staff to do something, then they will do it. That's how municipalities work. And this person
Do
may
you
find
live
it
in
is exciting.
Bennington proper? Do you live in Bennington?
Well, yeah, Bennington area, yeah.
No, that's what I'm at. Do you live in the town of Bennington?
I live just outside the town of Bennington.
And so that's okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Because the way Brattleboro operates is if I live in Guilford, they're not interested in somebody from Guilford organizing them. They want their committees and everything, people to be living from the town of Brattleboro.
But again, an important piece of this, we were always going to be regional from the start, including regional partners. So it was never just about Bennington. So
Shouldn't be, I agree.
yeah,
I
so
agree.
the same thing.
That's how
Guilford, yeah.
Brattleboro operates. And I don't care if they see this on video.
Well, no,
It's the truth.
yeah.
It's part of the problem.
Yeah. I think we should reach out to Bellas Falls.
You should also reach out to Westminster.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, that's
Westminster,
really in your
Bellas
backyard.
Falls,
Yeah.
Because they are very active in building community.
Yeah.
Yes, they
And,
are.
Yeah,
And, look,
And they've done a good job.
they've done an
This-
incredible job.
and I suspect there are people out there. There are people ready to do this work. You can do this.
One of the things that, we keep bringing up, and there's people interested, but it's not coalescing,
Right.
is this idea of erecting sort of a model of the Statue of Liberty down at our waterfront in the middle of the town, basically.
Great idea.
But, it's, people are interested, but there's no, real, there's no leadership or funding, for that matter, for the materials. And the high school students are interested, but, I keep waiting kind of for somebody to want to kind of put together,
Yeah.
But it hasn't occurred. But it seems to me that every town should be erecting a Statue of Liberty on 4th of July.
I actually think that's a great goal. There should be somebody in every town who's excited to do something. And you pull those people together, leaders will emerge.
How do you deal with funding for that better?
So a variety of things. I did scatter some of these around. This is our brochure for the expedition we did this past spring. We did get a grant for that to help subsidize it. We had a $9,000 grant. We've also been doing fundraising. And we've raised a fairly considerable amount of funds to support our efforts, and we continue to do that. To date, we
Is that
probably...
through small donations or?
It's a mix. We had a couple of really big ones, and we hope to get more really big ones. We've also engaged some of our business community as sponsors. Our VFW Auxiliary is a sponsor. Our Bank of Bennington is a sponsor. We are launching another fundraising effort called 250 for the 250th, and we're looking for 250 people to donate $250 for the 250th.
Yeah.
And if you do the math, that's
That's a good one.
$64,500. And probably 10,000 or 11,000 of that will be memorializing those 250 people, because we're limited to those 250 first people to sign up. And then that clears us about $50,000 to use, and we're launching that on November 14th. Not my idea, we stole it from Saratoga 250. Laura Roberts there, their wonderful organizer, had that idea, and I was like, oh my God, I love it, can I steal it? And she's like, of course, so I invite you as well. I mean, Brattleboro 250 for 250, that's a great way.
That's a good idea.
It's a decent chunk of money, but it's not so much that it's unattainable for a lot of people, and yet it's an achievable thing. So those are a couple of things we're doing. And we did a gala. We had 125 people come to a gala that we did as a fundraiser, and that was in '24, building up for '25. So we had the gala, a couple of big donations, we had that first grant, and I just finished writing another grant actually for 2027 for our Catamount Tavern project. So there are grant sources available that are actually closing on, what's today? Is today the 20th?
Yeah.
So yeah, sorry, no, it's the 21st, yeah, that closed, 22nd, oh my God. Yeah, that closed on the 20th, so
You
you're
mean
right
those
like there.
Vermont
but-
Humanities grants that you advertise on your website?
Yeah, Vermont Humanities is one source. The Champlain Valley National Heritage Partnership is another source. We're also, at the Vermont 250th level, we're going to be lobbying hard this year to get the state to put up $250,000. So I'll be looking to Brattleboro's legislative delegation and all the surrounding towns. Let's all come together on this, because that's for the town to re-grant to communities
Right.
like Brattleboro and Bennington to actually do these events. The state's not running any events. It's all going to be our localities,
That's
so
interesting.
we really need the state to pony up some dollars to help support those efforts.
What's happening with the Department of Tourism and Marketing?
So in Vermont,
Yeah.
yeah, they've been very helpful. They are a part of our 250th commission, and they leverage the activities that are happening in terms of marketing outreach for getting people here to enjoy them. So they've been quite supportive of that. They've also worked with us on things like producing these fine magnets that you have here in front of you and things like that.
Okay.
What about the museums?
That's, absolutely, you should be working with your local
Exactly,
museums. No
because the
question about it.
museum could have an incredible display or event. And I don't know if they've,
Well, you know, several months ago, I spoke to the museum and
Yeah.
they were planning something, but, you know, I checked in and they had a couple of ideas, and I don't know where they're at with it now.
we should definitely follow.
What was the idea?
I can't say.
But
Okay.
historic sites,
Because it was
museums,
something they
yeah.
said don't
Don't
share
share. Oh,
because
that's
we're
fine, we
still
understand.
working on it. Yeah, and they didn't want it, you know, out there, I guess.
Do you know what Bennington Museum is doing?
No, seriously, we'll just,
So they're an active member of our committee, and they
Okay.
often host our steering committee meetings, which we do on Zoom as well as in person, so people are not limited from other parts of the region. They are actually doing a major new gallery specific for the 250th and the Battle of Bennington. So they're doing a whole redo of their battle gallery, which is something they've had, but it needed a refresh, and they are doing a major redevelopment of that. So that's very exciting. They're also taking the lead in what we hope will be a signature project regarding Sip Ives. Sip Ives was a Green Mountain boy that was killed at the Battle of Bennington, the only Green Mountain boy killed at the Battle of Bennington. He was a black man. It's another example of one of those stories that are lesser known.
Yeah.
that's a good one.
We now know of 9 black men
Yeah.
fought at the Battle of
Yeah.
Bennington for the Patriots.
Is that out?
In fact, I left some of these, this is last year's, but on the back, Black Soldiers at the Battle of Bennington. There's resources and information there. This is an educator resource guide that you can look at. It's last year's version, but most of the content is still accurate. The newer version is coming out on November 20th, which is the next VAS conference. So if you want an updated version, just let me know and I can send you that when that comes out shortly.
I'm thinking of stories in the paper.
Yeah, no, and that's a really good one, because, you know, early Revolutionary period history tends to be whitewashed, and that's something we hope to fix.
Everything is whitewash. But, yeah, we had the high school students a few years ago, with the help of the Historical Society, recognize the black soldiers from Brattleboro that fought in the Civil War on our commons.
Awesome.
So that was an amazing thing that the students led.
Yeah.
But Lynn, you mentioned that the Historical Society is doing something big in November. What is that?
They're having a big event at the Latches. You were here maybe for that, or maybe you weren't. And he explained it all?
I
Yeah.
mean, you mean about the QR codes and the stories?
No, that's part of what they're doing.
Mhm.
Yeah, they're also going after all the historic buildings and putting information about them, and then you can hit the QR code and get
Awesome.
more details.
That's not
So
very
they're-
good.
But there was some event they're planning.
I
Yes.
think that
That was, did I dream that up?
I know, I'm not familiar with that, because
I'm
he
not
said he
either.
was
I'm
doing,
gonna
they were
find
gonna
out.
do an event at the Latches when
Yeah.
they unveiled those markers. but they didn't.
They didn't.
No,
No,
there's
they-
something
Well,
happening in November, I think. I'll check it out and email you guys.
Yeah,
Do we have some historical play of some locations that were around at that time? You know, I think of Fort Dummer,
Yeah,
which isn't the best example, but I wonder, you know, if there was enough enthusiasm focused correctly, someone might see an opportunity to put some money into that and spruce it up for the celebration.
well, it was flooded, there's no Fort
I
Dummer.
know, but isn't there's,
Well, there's a park,
There's a
the park is
sign.
named after it,
there's
but
a
it's.
sign or
yeah.
something.
I thought
And
there
we
was an
have
overlook
artifacts.
and there's a sign and you can
Yeah.
look down to where it
Yeah.
was.
Where it once was.
Yeah.
Well, but I think your point is well made. There's a ton of local history over here.
Yeah.
And there's people excited about every one of those tiny details somewhere. So part of the challenge is getting the word out so you can gather those people into your fold. You've got some great stories. The Lucy Prince story, that's another really good
Yeah.
one for this area.
Yeah.
You know, that's really a valuable one. And some of the
Yeah.
earliest Vermont constitutional law is around that case. And I have heard that the Vermont Bar Association and the Superior Court System is interested in doing some lectures and presentations around Lucy Prince and Peg Bowen and some of the other stories that became important legal battles in early Vermont.
Well, Royal Tyler is a very important figure because
There you go.
he wrote the first play that George Washington attended in the United States.
Oh my goodness, yes.
So he's from here.
In Brattle, George Washington was in Brattle?
No, Royal Tyler was a playwright and a jurist, an early jurist. He was from Guilford, but also had a home here in Brattleboro. His wife wrote the first child care manual in the United States.
Wow.
And a
There
great
you go.
recipe book that I have.
Right, there you go. So a dinner featuring some
Mary
recipes,
Tyler had a
you know,
recipe.
yeah.
Oh, yes, that's a great idea.
But a lot of people don't know Royal Tyler, you know, his whole thing. So he would be a likely figure to focus on.
Yeah.
But
Great ideas, these are good.
Have you explored with Windsor and Westminster at all? Have you
No,
visited their
no.
communities and all?
No, I'm familiar with them, and I know it's part of our story for 2027, but it's all you guys. That's your, you know, we'll leave that for you.
I'm just wondering if there could be some kind of plan that each one of these major towns, as you go up the East Coast, hugging the Connecticut River, has their stories to tell, and it's like a map where you just continue to go from one town to
That's a
to
great
another,
point.
and then it's a
And,
big
yeah, bring everyone
story.
up from New York and get on
That's
the
right.
train
That's what I
and
mean,
go
you
through.
get off
Yeah,
the train here
absolutely.
and do a, go up one
Yeah.
after the other, but that'd be the coordination of all these towns coming together. Would the commission be willing to help organize something like that?
So the commission won't organize it for you. That's where you guys come in. That's got to be you guys. But here's the thing, you're not alone. You have all those other communities. And I like that idea. Why not use the Connecticut River as that
Oh, yeah.
that spine that pulls you together?
Mhm.
And there's some great stories there. So yeah, I think you're on a good track there. So you're thinking regionally. You're thinking about how do we connect these
This
stories?
literally is a track,
Yeah.
a train.
Literally, as well as figuratively, absolutely.
And what do they call it? The Vermonter.
Right? There you go. Woo!
well, there are all the old forts. There's Fort Bridgman
Yeah.
and Fort Sarwell and Fort Dummer and then
Yeah.
Fort number 4 on the,
That's a big deal.
And we get the
all up and down
Connecticut
the
River,
Connecticut River, there's
get
old
them
forts that could
involved
Number
and get some
4,
money.
they're an active, that's an active site. They're doing 250th planning, reach out to them.
On the
Yeah,
New
they're-
Hampshire side.
Yeah, but
yes,
again,
Fort
you've
number
just
4.
got a river connecting you, not separating you.
Connecting us.
Again, do you think we can pull this all off for that year and not next year?
Well, so like I
I
said,
feel
next
it's so
year,
late right now.
well,
It's
next
already
year's,
not
November
really.
in this year, we haven't
Nobody
pulled
We'll kick
anything
it off
together.
at the July 4th, and then we continue.
yeah,
Yeah.
here's what I would
We
say.
announce it.
First of all, don't get discouraged. You have
Do I have
time.
to?
Pardon?
Do I have to?
No, not at all, but I'm just saying that, but when you say, well, is time our enemy? No, not necessarily. You still have time, let me say that instead. 2026, in a way, kind of carries itself, right? It's the federal thing,
Yeah.
we'll all be doing it together, it's the Declaration of Independence we
The
get.
White House is gonna own it.
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
So that kind of, but use that as your point to build up excitement for 2027, the
That's what I
signature
mean,
year.
maybe we
So-
can,
Yeah.
we're just a year
Yeah.
behind
So-
again. I mean, I like this, the minute I said, what? 2027, we got a whole other year, maybe we can plan
Yeah.
next year for this
So,
year. And then it's
exactly.
over, he doesn't own it.
26 is the
Well, I
build
gotta
up
get
to our signature anniversary year. So if you come away with nothing tonight except for that, that's wonderful, I love it.
But what
It is
what I'm
great.
saying is that I really feel that way, that a lot of other people feel.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, on, King's Day, we had
Yeah.
like 4,500 people
Yeah.
just in Brattleboro
There you
marching
go.
around. Because there is activism on that part. So
Absolutely.
it's gonna be more of that attitude next year.
So
But then we could own it in
Exactly.
2027, because he's not gonna own it then.
leverage the excitement in 2026 to build up for 27, which is
Vermont?
Vermont's year. And that's the most important thing.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I like the
Yeah.
idea that we really focus on, you
Vermont.
know, the things that are special. I mean, no one else is doing anything that year, and we
Yeah.
can claim it. 'cause
We own it.
Yeah, I'm
We
feeling
own it.
That's
that.
it there.
Right?
And we can work together
I
too.
really thought
You
about
brought
the
us
fact
there.
that, you
Yeah.
know, Vermont's constitution was
Exactly.
really a model for the
Yeah.
10 years later it
Exactly.
took them to do the federal.
And we can all use your logo, why do we have to reinvent?
You're welcome to, actually, this logo, I was, what I was using when I was lobbying back in 2017.
Oh, my God.
And we use a slightly different version, where is it? The one with the red outline, that's our current version. No, that's the bicentennial one. So I guess I didn't, okay, there we go. The red, we changed it slightly when it became our regional one. I did offer it to the state, they didn't want it, they had their own thing going on, so. But yeah, you'd be welcome to have it, but you guys will come up with something awesome, but if you want it, you're welcome to have
That's
it.
really nice.
What we do is we
Glad to
customize where it says freedom and unity. Every town in southwestern Vermont has a version of this that has their town name in the bottom. So it's Vermont, 1777, 2027, notice the dates, because
Yeah.
that's our final year.
Right.
And then instead of freedom and unity, it says Bennington, Manchester, Sunderland, Arlington, Pownell, Shaftesbury. Everyone has it, and I'd be happy to, if you guys want to use this, you'd be welcome to use the same.
I love it, I love
That's
everything
great.
about it.
Well, it puts us all together.
Isn't
you
it?
know?
It's
Yeah.
just
Nice.
gorgeous.
Yeah.
Have you done much outreach to your local high schools, for instance?
So on our steering committee, we have 2 social studies teachers. And they lead a education task force at the high school, and they've engaged not just the high school, but the middle school and the independent schools in the area. So they've even gone outside of the supervisory union. But I started at the supervisory union. I went to the curriculum director meeting for their history department, which happens every summer. So it'll happen right during civic season. So if you haven't, you know, you could wrap them in, if you don't get them for next year, you could wrap them in for 2027. But I started at that meeting, and at that meeting I met one teacher who was really excited about this. They're all history teachers, so they're all interested. But one was like, I love this idea. And actually, we did a deep dive. She was a 7th grade teacher, and we ended up doing a 2-hour program with her students for the next 3 years just on the Battle of Bennington. And it actually expanded to be a 5-day program, culminating with a visit to the battlefield as well as the monument. So anyway, long story short, yes, get in there with your teachers. There's going to be some teachers that are like, oh my God, I've been waiting for
Yeah.
someone to ask me this question. Like, what are we going to do for the 250? By the way, this is a little graphic thing that the state put out, Freedom and Unity. It's a little
Yeah.
graphic novel, you may have seen it. They've got copies of this available through the Vermont Humanities. You're welcome to take those sheets. If they've gone to VAST, they've seen it before, but if they haven't, that's a resource guide that they can use with ready-made stuff regarding the 250th. On the front are the 4 educational themes that have been identified by the state for people to think about. So there is some resources out there. And once I got that one teacher, that led me to the 2 other teachers that are now just so involved. They did a calendar with 60 different kids' artworks for the 250th. They have curriculum for kindergarten through 12th grade on their supervisory union portal. So at least one day a year, every classroom is doing something related to local Vermont history, which is not required by the state. There is 0 requirement for any Vermont history to be taught in our schools. Many do, but that all happens at the local level. So you can, so that's this whole huge tool that we never had before that was created just for the 250th. And by the way, I'm sure they'd be willing to share it with educators over here if they're interested. We did a 250th debate this past spring with high school teams from around the region debating whether or not and we did it the week before the 250th of the Battle of Lexington and Concord. So the debate was, should the colonies seek independence from Great Britain? The kids loved it. Oh my God, the engagement, the excitement, and the coverage in the papers was terrific. So, so yes, that's how we're engaging the students and the teachers, and they're right on board with this. If you guys have a debating team, there's a lot you can
That's what I
debate
don't
around
know.
the
Does the high
Declaration of
school-
Independence.
Yeah, does the
Yeah.
high school have one? I don't know. But we talked about debating with the kids. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
What are you doing with the indigenous people that were here before in 1777?
Yeah, so, well, at the state level, they have, one of the commissioner spots is reserved for Abenaki tribal leaders. It's currently empty, I think.
Well, Brianna Sheehan is from here, and she's on your commission, and she came here a couple months ago to speak to us. Is she still on the commission?
I don't know, I've never met this person, I've
Yeah,
been to,
she was appointed just several months ago.
okay, she may not have attended any meetings yet, is that possible?
I don't know.
I don't know, I don't recall,
She's on the website.
okay, great,
Yeah.
yeah. Melanie, you said?
No.
Brianna Sheehan.
Yeah, she's,
on the
because we
website.
had Melanie, someone, and I apologize, Melanie, I forgot your last name. She had to step down. I know a new person was appointed.
It's probably her.
That's probably her. For Bennington, it's a little more complicated because we were actually in Mohican territory, not Abenaki territory. We did reach out to the Stockbridge-Muncie band of the Mohicans, who are now actually based out in Wisconsin. And we met with them, we spoke with them, and they politely declined, which is their right. Because again, as we said at the start of this, for some people, this was nothing to celebrate. So they appreciated that we reached out to them, and we are honoring them by recognizing the contributions that Native Americans had, especially at the Battle of Bennington. You know, there were Native Americans on both sides, although the Mohicans actually came a day late, so they weren't at the battle, but there were First Nations from Canada that were there on the British side, and Stockbridge Indians did come to Bennington. They just arrived too late to be engaged in the fighting. So it's an important story to tell. We tell it, and we did reach out to them, but they respectfully declined.
It's almost as if we have to get all this information out in the paper of what others are doing, and let people say, what, you know, why are we doing that? Because there's no, you know, we've been doing this since when?
For this whole year.
Yeah, what month was that when you had the kickoff at the Legion?
We had an event at the American Legion, which was well attended.
Like
And we had
March or
high school
something?
students and
Yeah.
the music center and the
A
historical
lot of people
society
came.
and the parade leaders and all of that. So
Great.
we seeded the grounds.
That's right.
But we just haven't seen anything coming up really yet.
And we did a lot of brainstorming, so.
We did a lot of
everything
brainstorming, there was a lot of
ideas and-
ideas shared, and this was back in that was January.
No, was it?
March?
Do you
March,
believe
I
it
was thinking more like March or April.
It was
That was
March.
March.
Yeah.
No, it was
Yeah.
early.
Ken, what were you going to say?
I get back to the voting, commemorating, the birth of our nation, democracy. Everybody, we're doing an event, what does democracy look like? Democracy looks like voting, and people aren't voting.
You
So-
can't tell them.
If we had that contest, and you got high schoolers to get their parents to vote, and their grandparents to vote, they get more competitive than older people. You get the kids involved, and
Get
say,
the kids involved, you get the families.
right,
Good point.
no, and just say, hey, for the spring town vote, you against us, put it out in the high school, just say, hey, get your parents, get your grandparents to vote, find out why they're not voting, give it to them.
Because Brattleboro, like 17 and 16, 17-year-olds can vote.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Use
Yeah,
that,
we had
leverage
that
that.
effort.
Yeah.
But
That's a great idea.
did you mention to him your idea
Yeah,
about the
we
competition?
talked
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like fun.
Well,
Do
only
you think
because-
Bennington would step up?
Sure we would, of course.
Them's fighting words.
That's right, that's right.
So tell us again, our leader in the state is our governor, Bill Scott. So what's he saying about all this? Has he got any passion towards it? Does he have a sense of history?
Yeah, well, again, he was the one who was responsible for creating the
Well,
commission.
he
so
created
gets-
it, but
yeah.
then is he a leader himself? Does he come forward? Does he talk about it?
He's been very supportive. He's entrusted the commission to do the work. He is definitely supportive. So we just now got to get the rest of the legislature to support his budget, which will hopefully include that $250,000 in grant money for communities.
But is he gonna lobby himself, the legislators?
Well, it was in the governor's budget last year, and the legislature took it out.
Okay.
So, and I'm
I hear anything.
quite
He never
certain-
comes and visits us here.
Yeah, well, my experience with Governor Scott has been very positive. We came to him in April in preparation for the kickoff with the expedition. He signed a governor's proclamation, a week of celebrations from May 2nd through May 9th, commemorating our expedition in Ticonderoga. He's been a good host to us in Montpelier. So in general, I've been pretty positive with what he's been doing, but it's definitely a supportive role. Vermont's a you do it yourself kind of state. I hate to say it. We just don't have a ton of money and resources at the state level. So I think he's been very supportive, but look, if stuff's going to happen, it's going to happen because of these people in this room, you all.
So there's no presence for Vermont really on the national website, the American 250? I mean, have some towns
I haven't looked at it
join?
recently, so I guess the link is outdated, going to an earlier version or something, so I have not looked at it lately, to be honest with you. We did
You don't
participate.
send, you don't send them the events that you're
We do.
coordinating to
Yep,
do,
and
right?
I-
I mean,
and
I
I
think
still-
it's important that you send them in.
We still coordinate with them,
Yeah.
their representative still attends our regional meetings, and, yeah.
Oh, they have a representative in your part of the state for the
They have someone
American
who's
250?
the liaison for states and territories,
Oh,
and he's been there for quite some time, and he's been very present.
interesting.
They did have a very small grant program at the federal level, $10,000 they offered, but Vermont turned it down. Or didn't turn it down, but was not comfortable with the fine print and decided not to participate.
Interesting.
So,
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's Vermont.
well, but again, maybe because growing up in Vermont, things get done because we do it ourselves.
Exactly.
We use our bootstraps,
Yeah, yeah.
and we pick ourselves up and we get things done. And you know what? It doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have, some of the most awesome events I've been to were these little small community gatherings. Like there was one in Pollitt. It was so awesome. Pollitt's a very small community on the western edge of Vermont. And gosh, it was in this old ballroom above the town offices, and there's spackle on the roof, but it's got these beautiful paintings and murals that were probably done 150 years ago. There's this old stage, and they found the costumes that they had made for the bicentennial 50 years ago. And they actually ended up in Townsend, Vermont somehow, but they brought them back to Pollitt. And don't you know, they had a new generation of kids wearing those costumes, those bicentennial costumes, which were super cheesy yet awesome at the same time. And that
That's
was one
great.
of the most powerful moments of the year for me, was having that community of people who came out for this, and that whole story with the bicentennial costumes. It was really wonderful. So it's not the size, it's not how much money you make or how many people are involved, but it's touching the lives of just even a small number of people, especially if they're young people. What an impact it could have.
Yeah.
Could I have known at 9 years old, going to the bicentennial reenactment at the Battle of Bennington, that I would be sitting here today? No way. But are those two connected? Absolutely,
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
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 Fun
Kids will
stuff.
never forget it.
I never
And
forgot
you
it.
never forgot it.
I never forgot
Yeah.
it. One thing I would suggest in terms of generating excitement, one thing we started early on was a local reenactor group. Having people showing up in costume, doing the interpretation, that's a great way to engage the public and the kids. And then like you said, once you get the kids involved, you know, you get the parents too, so it's really powerful.
What happened to the Living History Association at Hogback?
Yeah.
Jim and that
Jim
guy.
Desadi and that crew, I think
Right.
it still exists in some form,
Mhm.
but I don't know that they're super active.
Okay, because they're not, I mean, you would know.
Yeah, no, I haven't heard much about them lately, but, you know, reaching out to them could be good. I know John is
They're
still
in the middle,
around.
that Molly Stark group.
That's
huh?
right, yeah. So like in Bennington, we've been working a lot with Whitcomb's Rangers and Warner's Regiment. Those have been the two primary reenactor units, but I've also been doing a deep dive into the whole world of the reenactor culture and all of how that works, because we want to get hundreds and hundreds of people to the Battle of Bennington in 2027. So part of it is thinking ahead and planning ahead and starting to develop those contacts and those relationships early on. So yeah, if you saw me a couple months ago, I had grown my hair and I just cut it off. I'm going to start growing it again in January.
How long was it?
It's pretty long, past my shoulders.
Oh, right.
Yeah, we were hoping you'd have the tricorner hat.
Oh, I really, would you have come? Yeah, so they put the picture in there. I don't think it helped to turn out too much, but there you go. But yeah.
Yeah. And I love, well, first of all, I love your enthusiasm and your passion. I mean, it's been a real
Thank
shot
you
in the
very
arm.
much.
Thank you so much. And I love just your encouragement to involve people, to invite people in. And I think that's really it's what's gonna make it sail, but it's also what's gonna have that lasting impact too.
Well
You know,
said.
if you can
Yeah,
do
we'd
it.
like to clone you.
I bet there's a
Like to
clone of me
adopt
over
you.
here somewhere. You just haven't found that person yet. But it's someone who
Ken.
knows how to take good notes. Maybe it's Ken. It could be Ken.
Ken, you're on.
Well,
Grow your
would you like to see a little of this video of the expedition?
Yes, let's see the video.
Yeah.
So this is something that was done by Cat TV, our local community group, and talk about involving partners.
We're here in downtown Hartford with the old state capitol behind me, and we are going to witness history. This is the start, the place of the plan to capture Fort Ticonderoga. Very excited to listen to new history, learn some things. And check out that cool building, huh? That is neat. Yeah.
Detail. Post. Alert. March.
So we're here today specifically, this is the first, as I said, of our commemorative events for the 250th. And on April 28th, 1775, a meeting was held and 300 pounds were committed, money, from the legislature. We know how hard that is. To capture Fort Ticonderoga.
With 300 pounds of cash from the Treasury, Captain Mott, Captain Phelps, and Mr. Romans headed to Salisbury with 3 to 5 additional volunteers. There, their party was increased to 16, and in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, another 50 enlisted in the enterprise. Along with some 100 Green Mountain Boys, led by Captain Ethan Allen, and the New Haven Company, led by Benedict Arnold, the group was able to take over Fort Ticonderoga by surprise and without loss on May 10th, 1775.
I will be carrying this replica powder horn with me. I replicated it myself, and I will be inscribing it with the names of the towns on the route of the expedition. The taking of Fort Ticonderoga
was an example of intercolonial cooperation without which the revolution would not have succeeded. When I read about the expedition, especially in the journals kept by some of the men, I am struck by how bold and improvised the whole operation was, and how it depended on stealth, democratic cooperation, and successful intelligence gathering, complete with an American spy, Noah Phelps, of Simsbury, posing as a peddler in need of a shave. You can see that a gathering here in Hartford 250 years ago started a line of dominoes falling across Connecticut and up through the Berkshires and into Vermont, splitting into different roads, converging on Castleton and Shoreham, and knocking down Fort Ty a mile across the lake in New York. It was a movement of men who were themselves moved by the ideals of liberty and self-governance. Their resourcefulness and courage continue to inspire us today.
Now those were some inspiring speeches about the capture of Fort Ticonderoga. And with our powder horn in hand, we departed Hartford, bound on the same route that Colonel Mott and his men took, through Connecticut, through Massachusetts, and through Vermont to Fort Ticonderoga. Our first stop on our journey to Fort Ticonderoga after leaving Hartford is Salisbury, Connecticut. Here we stopped at the old schoolhouse, now the Historical Society, for a wonderful tour, a look into the history, and an actual cannon used in the Revolution. Once Jonah carved the name Salisbury into the powder horn, it was on our way to the next stop. Once we left Salisbury, we crossed the border into Massachusetts for our next stop of Sheffield, Massachusetts.
We have now made it from Hartford to Salisbury, and now here we are in Sheffield.
You're in Sheffield at the home of Dan Raymond, who was a Tory. And people didn't like him all that much. And he was noted for cutting down the Liberty Tree.
Oh no!
So just recently, a week or so ago, we had the 8th graders from Monterey Regional School come and put up their own Liberty Tree.
Awesome.
And with their symbols of resistance, which were the Sheffield Resolves, which took place in our meeting house, which is the church. And then they did 2 flags to represent what liberty meant to them.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Let's take a look. Come on.
Yeah.
Once we got to Sheffield, we met people from their local historical society as Jonah once again carved the name Sheffield into the powder horn. The people of Sheffield also have raised this lovely liberty pole with local students contributing to it. And once we were done in Sheffield, it was on to Pittsfield.
Hip hip, huzzah! We're standing here at the site of Easton's Tavern. This is where Ed Mott met with James Easton to continue gathering forces for the expedition to Ticonderoga.
Now that we're leaving the spot, we are on our way to Bennington! Huzzah! Yes, that's right, on our way to Bennington, but we have to make a quick stop in Pownell first.
Gather round! Gather round! Everybody, gather round! I have something I need to say. We need to rally together with Ethan Allen and his forces, and we need to go and take Fort Ticonderoga now.
Why? A British fort?
Yes. It is lightly guarded. The spies have informed us that it is lightly guarded, and they have cannons, they have ammunition, they have rations. This is our time in this point in history. Look at what they did at the Boston Massacre. Look at what we did in Lexington and Concord. We can beat them. Yes, we can.
You're gonna be tarred and feathered when you're caught.
This started in Hartford, Connecticut has been journeying up and will go all the way to Ticonderoga.
Once we left Pownell, it was on our way to Bennington, where Colonel Mott was destined to meet Ethan Allen.
Colonel Allen, I presume. Captain Edward Mott of the Colony of Connecticut, here to find the commander of the Green Mountain Boys.
You see him before you, Captain Mott. I was told you were on the way with some good news?
Some pay in my pocket for your Green Mountain Boys, you mean? Yes, thanks to the Treasury of Connecticut. You're a Connecticut man too, I know.
A man of the New Hampshire grants and these Green Mountains.
We expect you to muster your Green Mountain Boys.
A wise decision. The way I see it, the boys and I are your best hope for success. Thanks to years of struggling with Yorkers trying to claim our land, we have become an efficient and feared militia. I've already put out word to them, and I am pleased we are moving forward with this expedition. The first systematic and bloody attempt at Lexington and Concord to enslave America has thoroughly electrified my mind, and I am fully determined to take part with my country.
Colonel Allen, let me remind you that part of America is already enslaved, as I am myself, to Stephen Fay, the owner of this tavern. I hope you will take part with us, too.
Like I said, Peg, we think alike. To the capture of Fort Ticonderoga.
To liberty and those with the spirit to assert it. Hip, hip.
Now that Colonel Mott and Ethan Allen have met at the Catamount Tavern, it was time for them to continue their journey northward. But along the way, they were gathering more and more Green Mountain Boys to the cause and effort of capturing Fort Ticonderoga. They eventually made their way to Manchester, where a proclamation from the state of Vermont was read.
Whereas the Green Mountain Boys' bold action led to the capture of Forts Ticonderoga and Crown Point, the first major painter victories of the Revolution. Now, therefore, I, Philip E. Scott, Governor, hereby proclaim May 2nd through 9th, 2025, as Ethan Allen and the Green Mountain Boys Week in Vermont, given under my hand in the Great Seal of the State of Vermont on this first day of May, AD 2025.
After Manchester, they continued to Paulet, where local representatives were receiving the powder horn.
Vermonters are commemorating the early role of the gallant, heroic men of New Hampshire grants in the fight of American independence, the prelude to Vermont's admission as our nation's 14th state. And whereas Bennington County, the commemoration of the expedition to Ticonderoga, Ethan Allen, the Green Mountain Boys, and America's first victory includes public events celebrating these brave deeds of 1775.
Indeed, in Bennington, along with Ed Mott, a bold plan was hatched. And in Bennington, after that initial meeting where he has enlisted the Ethan Allen and the Green Mountain Boys, we have traveled northwards. We have traveled through the towns of Shaftesbury, of Arlington, of Sunderland, Manchester, and Dorset, till we come to you here today, now, 250 years to the day, almost exactly, from when we came all those years ago. Proudly carrying the ceremonial horn, we now are excited to pass it off to a representative right here in Paulet. To whom do I have the honor of giving it?
Platt Herrick, a descendant of Samuel Herrick of the Herrick Rangers and Green Mountain Boys, will accept the ceremonial powder horn.
Sir, it is my pleasure and honor to present you today with this ceremonial horn. I understand you will only have it a brief time, but for that time you have it, please accept this with our gracious thanks. Thank you.
And after Paulet, finally they made it to Castleton. On the eve of their bold plan, they enjoyed a modern-day rendition of the events that transpired 250 years ago.
Rise on eagle's wings and mount up to glory, freedom, and immortal honor, if she did but know and exert her strength. Fame is now hovering over her head. A vast continent must sink to poverty, horror, bondage, or rise to unconquerable freedom, immense wealth, inexpressible felicity, and immortal fame. To liberty and those with the spirit to assert it. Hip hip, huzzah! Hip hip, huzzah! Hip hip, huzzah!
And finally, at last, May 10th, 1775, we have made it to Fort Ticonderoga. Huzzah!
Welcome to Fort Ticonderoga. Today is May 10th, the 250th anniversary of the capture of Fort Ticonderoga, and the final step in our journey for our commemorative powder horn, which began its journey in Hartford, Connecticut, and from there traveled through Massachusetts and through Vermont, finally to Hans Cove, over Lake Champlain, here to Fort Ticonderoga.
Today we address one event, but I hope we will all spend the next few years exploring as many people and events as possible to better understand the 250-year-old ideas, connections, and stories that bind us today.
Today, the importance of history and civics has never been more important. We need to understand our past in order to preserve the freedoms that we fought for and established 250 years ago.
And I think BCTV would definitely film
Oh, yeah, I was
something
just
that
gonna
they
say.
did. And does the high school have a drama club, a drama group?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and that's
Really-
nice because
really
it's not.
good one.
Yeah, that it's not just NEYT kids that pay to participate, that it would, be open to everybody. And then especially if we could get, it to be multi-generational and, like that, like yours was. That would be great.
This would be good inspiration.
And also just the carving of the powder horn. I thought, if we could get somebody at the hatch space to come and do some presentations on, arts and crafts of that time,
And maybe some kind of an item that gets carried from New
Yeah.
Hampshire to the Battle of
Yeah.
Bennington. Maybe
Yeah,
it's
I
a
like
ceremonial musket or something, I don't know.
Is there a licensing agreement? Can anyone present that to the public?
You have my permission, it was ours.
And he's on film.
Well, and also the PEG access stations communicate.
Okay.
Totally
They all
fine,
share-
yeah, if they reach
all
out to
share.
Catamount TV,
Yeah.
Cat TV in Bennington, they'd be
Yeah.
happy
Yeah.
to share it. We've also done, you saw the skit that we did for the students, but we have we spent 2 days just doing field trips with fourth graders. Every fourth grader in the region had the opportunity to participate in this. And we have an entire, I think it's an 8-minute video just following one class of students through that whole 2-hour experience. So If you're looking for stuff to watch, there's that also. Actually, if you go to the Bennington250.org website, there are links to all those videos on there as well.
The BCTV carried that first meeting that we did, you know,
Yeah.
little groups to talk
Yeah.
about it. So that's available on BCTV.
This would be really good.
Yeah, people would be interested.
I like that engraving.
Now, I'm on the board of
It's fun.
BCTV, so, you know, I can bring all this up. And also, they're celebrating their 50th anniversary, so there could be some tie-in.
Nice. This year or next year?
This year.
Huh,
This year.
okay.
Yeah, we could get something started maybe.
Makes sense.
We have a new station, Amtrak station, opening planned for probably the first week in May. The date has not been set, but the station's going to open, and we were thinking, you know, of doing some Words Trail reenactments with someone. I already hired somebody to be Kipling.
Great idea.
So, you know, maybe we could do some kind of reenactment around the opening of the station as part of it, you
Yeah.
know, since we're
Yeah.
doing that anyway. And, yeah.
Sure. And I'm sure the Green Mountain Boys would be willing to come over for some events if you have some things going on. So.
Oh, that's great. Get people excited. That's the thing, there's no excitement over here for this, except for us.
Well, I think as the awareness grows.
Yeah, it feels like it's too far away from people probably.
Yeah.
And now it's starting to like, oh, it's next year. you
But
know.
I like the takeaway, like that, really focus on 27.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a good takeaway from tonight.
Use
And I'm
26
really
as
grateful
your
for that.
build-up for
That's
that.
my
Yes,
takeaway.
yeah.
Yeah, because it kind of leads itself, right? I mean, it's the Declaration of Independence. We know what we need to do around that. Civic season. But then use that excitement to propel you. There you go. I think that's brilliant.
And another takeaway is what you said very strongly, is to approach our select board. You know, and really lean on it.
Not just in Brattleboro, but in all the towns.
Yeah.
Oh, the select board.
Yeah.
And that's actually a great way to get exposure for your group, because when you talk to the select board, those are typically televised as well.
So somebody could do an editorial also.
Lynn.
You've got some great writers in
You
there.
are somebody.
Great writers in
Yeah,
there.
absolutely.
Some of us don't stretch very thin.
Well, and let's be real. Everybody is stretched thin. We all have more on our plate than we can handle, but this only happens once every 50 years. Yeah. And it's an opportunity.
I think it's a very important moment to you know, reiterate the values that we do share.
Yeah, it's once in a generation we have this opportunity.
And you're living proof of the effect.
Exactly.
You know, it's a matter of, we don't know how far that effect will be for the people involved.
Well, I heard a lot of great ideas here tonight. I think you guys have a bright future.
I think the important thing is that.
Could you help me?
Yeah.
Make it sort of a southern Vermont.
Absolutely. The more we collaborate and work
Nothing wrong
together, the
with that.
better.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong
Absolutely.
with that.
Yep.
Betty, what's that
That's where it's
recipe
gonna
book
be.
you were talking about?
And we've got the
Collaboration.
Very different values on
Yes.
board.
Okay.
Just a little
Yeah.
sad,
Very
very
common
communities,
titles.
yes. But we when we had the bicentennial parade, you know, all the state had those parades.
Yeah.
We had the biggest too.
See, there you go. There you go.
We really did.
You know, while you're talking about this,
Howard Dean.
find someone who has access to some of those pictures of those
We did. It was
parades.
all videotaped.
Well, there you go. You know,
But that,
get people excited. You did it in '76. You could do it in
Yeah.
2026 and
Yeah.
27.
And we've got the media too.
Yeah. Well,
Anything else or good gossip to share?
Yeah, let's get all the cameras rolling. Anyway, thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.